Hey there, I had a comment on my last upload from Drew Smith asking about roofs and a few other how-to ideas. I've been messing around with Talespire trying to make some images for my Dungeons & Dragons campaign again, so here's another group of things that I've learned for building houses, roofing, and decorating them when you're done in a few hopefully easy to follow steps. I always start with a square and then I drag it out into a rectangle for the size of building that I want to make. If I have a particular floor plan for a building with specific rooms, then I will also use the corner tool to design those rooms. Your rooms and house can really be any size. I try to keep everything 2 spaces apart because down the line it's a lot easier to make corrections when everything is in even numbers. The stuff with odd numbers doesn't quite match up as well. If I don't have a preset floor plan idea, then I just match up a few rectangles crisscrossing each other, and I'll pull them to a size that looks good for the general shape of the house or building that I'm trying to make. Once I have that laid out, I use the wall tool with a floor attached to it to put walls everywhere. I don't bother with windows or doors until the very end, because your idea for what this is going to be in the beginning might change once you see what it looks like when it has the roof on it and everything's all finished. After I fill in the floor, I'll take the wall tool and I will build a wall along the lines of the rectangles that I set out in the beginning to sort of give me an idea of what the load-bearing walls in the structure would be. This one's pretty simple, so it's really just one load-bearing wall before I put on the roof. I set the roof up for these rectangles one at a time, and I treat them like separate buildings that are right next to each other. It's easier to set it up that way and then delete unneeded roof spaces later on than it is to try and make everything work all at once. I'll then, on narrow structures like this, I'll take a window and I will lower it into the wall that it's sitting on top of so that the windowsill lines up with that wall. I do try to avoid using the single roof tiles because they don't look like they line up quite as well. They leave a lot of gaps. So I'll take the 2x2 roof tiles and I will just sink them in so that it lines up a little better. And I finish the roof again on each rectangle separately. I line up the second roof going the opposite direction from the first one. And going back to why I do everything in 2s, it's going to be a lot easier to make that corner look good with a 2x2 piece than it would if there were an odd number in there. So I just remove the corner of roof that I put up there, and I take the inverted corner tool and line it up appropriately. It kind of clips a little bit right there on that edge, but that's going to be easy to hide with the decorations later on. Next up, I'll pull these things out of the roof here. They're not completely necessary, although it's not really necessary to remove them either. And I put some walls up on the outside just to bring up the wall up to where the rooftop is going to go to. This is just a personal preference, but for the tavern, I like to lower the walls just one notch so that the brick layer lines up with the wood layer from the top of the previous wall. This works out okay because the flat tavern rooftop, it looks a little wonky when you put it all up on top like that. So you always have to lower it one section anyway, and it lines up with the walls that I've lowered just fine. Then take that flat roof tool, wedge it into the angled roof that you put up before, and you have a sort of basic looking roof with 2 sections of a building. If a broad, flat rooftop is what you want, you can take the flat roof tool, sink it in a couple spaces, and layer it over those lines, just like in my last video with the terrain tools, and it'll give you a smoother look and get rid of those divots. You could put a patio on this roof, or really anything if you just want it to be a rooftop and you don't want the flat surface. You could take the angled 2x2s and wedge them in so that the ridges of the rooftop line up with the first roof. And this is where I'll use the 1x1s to finish this little section of the roof. This is pretty much the only time that I'll use the 1x1s because in a larger roof or on a larger slope, you're going to have a lot more of those creases and it isn't going to look as good. I'll take the flat roof tool, line it up at the top, and pull it across here. There's one empty space there, but that's fine because I'm going to use it again to get rid of those creases. If you want a little bit more of a natural look, you can rotate it with every single one that you place, and you'll be getting rid of those creases while also not making it look too uniform up top. I have a smaller version of this building that I put in with a second floor, and instead of a flat roof on top, I put in a small balcony that comes out of the second floor with a staircase. If I pull this green tool down, you can see that I've actually put some stairs in here to sort of illustrate how that would look. This house is sort of too small for players to explore, but for just adding flavor to a larger village or a city that you're building, this is pretty much the size that I would typically go with. Around this stage, after I've put in the rooftops and finished those, is when I would start putting in the doors and the windows and decide where I wanted the entrance and stuff like that to be. You can just pull out the walls that you've already placed and drop in window walls wherever you feel like they would look good from the outside. Once the roof is up, it's also a little bit easier to see where you might want to make adjustments. If you want to drag out a wall, it's pretty easy to do that and then just add more roof the same way you did with the previous one to make any building a little bit bigger or give it more of a unique shape. Just pull the roof that you had put up previously off the wall and build the new one just like we did with the first building. Here we just use the flat roof tool again. This could be another balcony. We could smooth it out like we did the first one, or we could even add like a tower or a third floor there. You can see here I've added a small tower on top to give it sort of a unique feature. And then with decorating, everything starts to look a little bit more natural. So this is the final state that I'll leave this building in. I just took a bunch of nature stuff, trees, bushes, and I dragged it down into the roof to create moss and hide some of those gaps. It's really easy to do. Go into the tree here. You're going to use that control tool, find a gap that you don't like, drag the tree underneath. The trunk of that tree is going to be inside the house. These houses and buildings, all of them only need to look good from the outside, because as soon as you use that green arrow tool to drag down, these trees and bushes and stuff like that are going to disappear from view along with the rooftop. So you can put whatever you want hanging into the house. You can also use the Alt key. If you hold it down, you can rotate these objects 360 degrees instead of just the 4-option snap feature by clicking in your mouse button. So that one's done. This video is getting a little bit long. I do have some other houses prepared here. Just want to show you how I do it sort of in transition. So this is the same thing. I've got 3 rectangles, build a flat roof on top. Then I decided I wanted a balcony on top of that flat roof. I put in a little extra window over here, was sort of another step. And then to make it look more unique, I started decorating it. The cool thing with thatch here is almost all of the nature things look good on thatch. With the tavern or some of the other roofs, some stuff can kind of look out of place. But with thatch, you really can use whatever you want. You can also use logs to create what looks like support beams or staircases wedged into the thatch roof to give it a sort of aged or framed look. Like down there on the bottom, it looks a little bit older. Now, if you have too much nature stuff wedged into your roof that it's not going to be viable to have your players actually look inside, you can just copy the main floor of your building and put a second set of it right next to it, or on a different board altogether if you have to. And then you can take any rooftop or any large building. I usually use these stair walls. For some reason, I always go to the Morgoth stair wall, and I just drag it across the entire top. Then when you use that green drag down tool and you remove that roof, you're going to look like you are inside the building instead of outside in open sunlight. In order to copy your own buildings, you can hold X key. It'll put a little box under your cursor there. You drag it around whatever you want to pick up and just put it inside a little box like this. Then when you push Control C, it's going to instantly give you a copy of that building that you can place, and you'll be placing it just like you would anything you pick from the menu. These are going to take the lowest possible object and put that on the floor, so that's why these trees here are considered the base of it. In order to get around that, just push Control V, and you can drop it down with the Control key. The copy-paste tool will carry over from board to board, so if you want to have a second board that's just full of templates of things you've used that you would like to use again in later builds, you can copy-paste across boards within the campaign. I've just got one more tip for making your buildings look a little bit unique or a little bit more eccentric. Here on the final version of this thatch house, I decided to put a little dinner spot up top with a lattice roof covered in vines over top of the table. The way I did that is in miscellaneous exterior. They have these logs that are just lying on the ground. You can line those up 3 or 4 at a time and then crisscross them, just like I'm doing right here. Not really going to need this fourth one. Then with that copy paste tool, you can select what you've made, paste it, and line them up again, so you can build big structures like this in a shorter amount of time without having to worry about lining up each individual piece. And then going back up here, you can see from the wall of this lattice, that's actually just a ladder. Like I say in the first video, pretty much anything can be anything. You can mix and match all these tools to turn them into other things to suit whatever you need for the look that you're trying to achieve. Thanks for hanging out. I know this was a long one, but I appreciated the feedback from last time. If you guys have any other ideas or anything that you would like to see or anything you would like to share with me, please let me know in the comments, and I'll try to get back to you. Thanks again. Bye.